Hi, everyone. It's Kelly Bennett, and this is kicking off a new season of Creative Direction with Kelly Bennett podcast. And I have a really special guest, someone who I really just enjoy talking with. We've had coffee together, met at a creative mornings, and someone who's super creative and helping creatives be more creative. Taylor Harrington is here. She is the head of community at Groove app, which is we'll get into, but totally you're going to want to join this app. And Taylor, I just really appreciate you being here. Welcome.
I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank
Me
you. It's
too.
like I feel like we keep seeing each other in all of these creative spaces, and now
Yes.
here we are having a full conversation about creativity.
I love it and I'm here for it and I'm excited. So thank you so much. I think, oh no, you're like my second, I was gonna say my first New York City guest, but second.
I'll
So
take second. That still
yeah,
sounds cool.
that's also a goal of mine this year is to have more local creatives on my podcast and like re-engaging with the local creative community here. So thank you for
Mm,
kicking it off for 2023. I really appreciate it.
of course, anytime. Happy to be a New Yorker.
Perfect. Yes. So let's talk about a little of your background because what I remember last time we got coffee, you were telling me about your career path and I was really taken by it. It just sounded really exploratory and curious and the
Mm.
way that you approach things and also how your experience now in tech. So how did you start crafting your career and what did you maybe think it was going to be in the beginning and where are you landing now? Like I would love to hear a little more of the behind the scenes.
Totally. Happy to. And it's funny, if all of us were in a room, all of your listeners at the same time, I would be like, everyone raise your hand who has had a wavy, wacky career path. And I
Oh my
feel like
god.
all of the listeners would be like, yes.
Everybody. Both
Yeah.
my hands would be up. Mhm.
Yes. Probably moving around, dancing a little bit. So
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. So I have always been a creative human. I've always loved doing things differently.
Mhm.
I was back, we're going a little bit farther back, but back in high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I knew that I wanted to do it different than what was on a brochure. I knew
Yes.
I wanted to check the boxes of going to class and having a major, but I really knew that the things that I wanted to do were the projects outside of the classroom. So
Mhm.
I ended up going to Penn State University, which is the biggest campus. You've got 45,000 undergrad students and on just the main campus, but 90,000 across all of their campuses. And it's got the
Wow.
largest alumni network. So that to me said two things when I was choosing a college. It said there are a ton of people here that I can meet, which, as you said, I love community. I love meeting new
Yes.
people. Um, and I also thought, wow, if there's such a big campus with such a student body, there's got to be cool stuff that I can get involved with here that can help really elevate that learning experience that happens inside of the classroom. So in college, without getting too far into it, I worked on a bunch of different student startups. Talking about creativity, I worked in a craft studio my senior year of college, which was so
How
fun.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was really a fun experience there because it started as me just raising my hand. I loved going to this craft studio and said like, "Hey, any chance I can work at the front desk?" And it turned into over the course of 2 semesters, me helping to lead the workshops that were there. So they had, ladies' night on Thursdays where all the moms in the local area would come in and have a glass of wine and paint a picture together, and I would tell them how to do that, or they would have sorority gatherings that would happen, or they would have preschoolers that come in for finger paintings. They had all different types of things. And when I look back on it now, it really was quite a aha moment for me that I enjoyed gathering people for a shared purpose and bringing people
Hmm.
together who had similar values and wanted to create a special experience for them from the moment they walked in the door to the moment that they left and even came home with whatever that masterpiece was that they made. And one thing led to another, and I had heard about The Opposite of Loneliness, which was a speech given by someone named Marina Keegan back
Hmm.
in 2012. And I like to say that I'm on a mission to create the opposite of loneliness in the world now. I found this speech years ago, but it basically says that there's not really a good word for the opposite of loneliness. It's
Hmm.
this feeling, it's not quite love and it's not quite community. It's just this feeling that there are an abundance of people who are in this together, who are on your team. And so that's the definition that Marina shares. And I
Oh, I
just
love
loved
that.
that. Yeah. And I thought, I didn't really have quite the words for it at that stage as I'm graduating from college. But I loved Marina's words and thought, God, I love connecting people. And I also, like I said, had some exposure to that entrepreneurship world, that creative wavy path. And eventually, through sharing that I loved connecting with people and that I wanted to keep doing that and being around the type of people that were doing things differently, it led to my first conversation where I met Seth Godin, who's a best-selling author and
So
workshop
cool.
leader and entrepreneur. And yeah, and so we had a conversation. He had an open position at the studio, which was in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, so right outside of New York City. It was a team of what became 6 in person at this small studio office. It really was an apartment building that was turned into, or an apartment, an apartment that was turned into a really cool office space. And I had reached out through a mutual connection, and I had one conversation, which led to me working with him while in college, and then eventually after college, coming on full time to work in that Hastings-on-Hudson office. And so the first 2 years of my career were spent really working with those creative humans who were doing things
Like
differently.
super creative. I
Yeah.
mean, he's like one of the top creative, pioneers, so to speak, of doing things differently. So what a cool job right out of the gate.
Yeah. And, he attracted so many people to the workshops, and his readers, of course, that identify as what he calls linchpins of those people who aren't cogs in the system. They are trying to be someone who stands out and is irreplaceable. And so through the workshops and the alumni that we host, or the online workshops we host, and all the alumni that came with that, I was surrounded by so many cool, interesting people, virtually or in person. And fast forward 2 years, the company changed quite a bit. Seth stepped away from the company. He still writes books and has, other things that he works on, other cool projects, but the company changed a little bit, and it had me have this pause of, okay, what do I want to do next? And I thought, let me take the digital marketing that I was doing at the time. So that's what my title was Director of Digital Marketing. And let me figure out what I really loved about that. And it came down to the community piece of it, which was about 20% of my job if I had to put a percentage on it. And I said, how could I do that 100% of the time? And as I started to kind of go through this process, which was absolutely messy and wavy, of figuring out what I wanted to do next and where I wanted to work and what was aligned with that, I ended up finding Groove at just like the perfect time when I was having aha moments and realizing what I really wanted. And I saw it on a website, on angellist.com, which has a lot of awesome startups. And I reached out to the founder right away, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I could have written a job description, like this would be it. Can we
What were
chat?
some things in the description that really caught your eye?
It was the people. I think in the process of realizing that I wanted to do community, I had a really tough moment in that job process of finding things out, where I was interviewing at a bunch of different companies and something wasn't feeling right, like in my gut. You know that feeling when you're like, I'm sort of far down a path, but then you're like, I have enough time that I could turn back around if I really needed to.
Yeah.
I was there, and I was in the final stages of an interview, and it just wasn't feeling right. This wasn't at Groove. This was at a different company. And I realized that the reason it didn't feel right was the people. If I was going to be leading a community, it wasn't the people that I was like amped up to be around. And for transparency, that group of people were people who didn't really want to be there. It was their boss had signed them up to be a part of that community. And I realized that just wasn't the group I wanted to be around. And so there were a couple of other communities that weren't quite that, but they weren't the group I want to be around. And I was like, God, I want to be around those creatives. I want to be around the people building businesses, who have passion projects, who are building podcasts, who are writing books, all of those creative humans.
Yep.
And when I had that clarity, and gratefully, I very nicely had a little bit of time to figure that out and then take that leap, it felt like Groove landed in my lap like the moment that I needed it to. It was pretty crazy.
It's really cool to hear and have that confirmation, because I'm sure someone listening to this is on that path of trying to put their finger on what exactly they want. And what it sounds like is that you were self-aware enough to know what was starting to feel good, but really what wasn't starting to feel good, and allowing yourself that time and space to pivot a bit so that you could really be like, no, this is really what I want. And then was able to attract that opportunity. That's awesome. And that's definitely a
Yeah.
skill that takes time to refine. So thank you for sharing that, because that is a huge takeaway of just trusting yourself to even do that and not forcing something on yourself just to say yes to something because you
Hmm.
could. Okay. So you got hired at Groove,
Yes.
and I think it's really cool because your title is head of community,
It
right?
is. Yeah. And I was the
And
first full-time hire there. So it was just me and two
which is
co-founders.
which is so cool that they were like, community is so important.
Exactly. It means a lot to them.
Yeah. And so, from my perspective of just my experience in marketing, community is such a big piece of it. And it's something that a lot of brands struggle to find how to implement community, because with bigger brands, it feels so vast and like you don't have a personal connection with the brand. And then smaller businesses, I think, often overlook community because they feel like they have to be bigger in order to build a community.
Mm,
So, how did you start approaching community from, being the first hire at this
totally.
app company, and like your perspective and like just the co-founder's perspective of like, okay, we're starting this thing where they already started. Here's our approach on community. I would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, totally. So when I joined the team, there were only 23 people on the Groove app. So it was mostly the founders, the freelancers they were working with at the time, family and friends, and a few investors, and a couple, like I said, a couple of family and friends. And so those were
Yeah.
the initial Groovers who, like, you were like, I joined the team, and I'm like, okay, I gotta get up to speed and know who these people are because they're really our first members, and just listen. The moment that I joined
Mm,
that team, I spent the first month. I remember talking to Josh, our CEO and co-founder, and he very much supported and encouraged me to just take the first 4 weeks of this job and listen as much as I can. See how people are already using the product. Because 23 was the day I started, but of course, 4 weeks into it, more and more people started joining.
sure.
Especially, I announced like, hey, I've got a new job. I came from Akimbo and Alt MBA, which had a lot of awesome alumni. So they came on over too, to try it out. And so, it was trying to build up that initial audience. And so I really was listening, but it was sort of a cool thing that I had already been connecting with people in my life
Hmm.
that this could work for. And so it was an easy ask or an easy transition for them to say, oh, Taylor just moved jobs. This sounds interesting. Why don't I hop in? And so a lot of those initial groovers were either people that I was connected to or my teammates were connected to, and that ripple effect of them then referring their friends. So I do
Love
think there's a
that.
great lesson in there of like, start with your core group.
Yes.
There's a great book I have on my shelf behind me called The 2 Hour Cocktail Party. It's written by a guy named Nick Gray. And he talks about how if you were going to host a cocktail party, instead of just like telling the entire world, show up at my apartment on this date, like I'm having a cocktail party, he talks about getting enrollment from the first 6 people so that even if no one else shows up to the cocktail party, you've got your core 6 people that are going to show up. No
Mm,
doubt about it, they're going to be there. And I think about that with community a lot. If someone's listening and they're looking to start a community, figure out who your core group is, whatever that number needs to be for it to still be successful,
yep.
whether it's starting a virtual event for that community. Let's say you have some sort of a marketing company and you want to teach other marketers how to do something. Would the Zoom call that you're hosting be successful if 6 people showed up? If so, get your 6 yeses and then blast it out to everyone to start building up that community from beyond that. So that's one tip I would have with it. The other thing I'll say is I think community means a lot of different things. It's such a
Right.
buzzword now. And
Right.
so there's, as you mentioned, there are like these different size companies that are trying to include community. And one of the things that's interesting about Groove is because it is an app where naturally, like, the community is the core of the experience. You are hopping into a co-working experience, and we'll talk about that more, but there's no way to build Groove without community being at the center. Whereas other
Right.
companies, you look at, a lot of people will point to Sephora, for example, as a huge company that does have a community. They have their Beauty Insiders community.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say that Beauty Insiders community is like super, super connected, but there is some sort of
Right.
like an online forum where they can talk about their favorite products and they get benefits from being a part of that. Um, So it really depends on what are you looking to build. And two of the key questions I learned working with Seth that are just like grilled into my brain are who is it for and what's it for? And if you can answer both of those questions clearly, then you can build something really intentionally. And that's how I approach anything I do at Groove with community, whether it's building a new feature, whether it's hosting, as you know, we host these goal planning parties every month.
Which are great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love them.
I just hosted one today, and as I've hosted more and more of them, the answers to those two questions has become clearer and clearer. And so that makes it easier for me to make decisions about what to send in the follow-up email, how to get people excited about coming, those types of things. So you're not gonna have the perfect answers to those two questions before you start your community or before you start that community project, but have enough of a reason of like, oh, okay, this is going to be refined, but I know I can answer those questions a little bit because it'll make your decision making a heck of a lot easier.
I love this so much. I already took so many notes because another thing that you just touched upon was starting, and then you're going to be able to refine it. So many creatives that I work with, when I ask different questions about like, what does the community look like and who are you building this for, looking at a different product or service, and they're not sure, a lot of them are usually saying like, oh my gosh, I should already know this, or like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't. And I'm like, this is why we talk it through so that you have the confidence to even test and to explore and to experiment so that you could find these answers and just keep refining the answers, because things could shift, things can change. Business is never set in stone completely, especially when you're working with people, right?
Yes.
And so I'm really glad that you talked about starting and then refining it each time you did it, and having the awareness of like, okay, this is probably going to need some refining, and that's a good thing. I'm always learning from each time I host it. I'm always taking notes of what's working, what's not working, and I'm just drilling this down more and more. So then now you're getting super clear on what that community looks like. What is it? Who is it for? Then you could really start growing it because you're so clear on what that solid group is. And it's so much easier to market that versus just trying to cast a wide net and seeing who comes to you. So I'm really glad that you said that.
Well, and I think two more things on this is I'll say I was just talking to a friend who is he's a financial planner. So he helps people one-on-one plan out their finances, and he's looking at creating a workshop. And so I had said to him, like, all right, let's go through some of these questions. Okay. Like it seems like this big, scary project right now, but when you start to get clear about it, it's like, well, if you had to write a couple of sentences of who this is for, you know who this is for. Like, don't doubt yourself. You know who this is for. You've been working with people that this is for the last X number of years. I feel confident you know the answer. And sometimes it's just having someone like repeat that back to you that's really helpful.
Totally.
And also, really figuring out like, really leaning into the fact that you don't need to have all the answers right away, and you're not going to. So let's just embrace that, because like he was like, well, he's like, how much should I charge? And I'm like, well, what would you be proud of charging? And like, what would you be really excited if you charged a certain amount? So he threw out a number, and I said, do you think that someone would pay that? And he said, well, now I don't know. That was just my dream number. And I said, well, why don't you ask people? You're talking to people. Ask people. Tell them that this is the thing that you're starting and this is the price. And just start before you make it official. You can have a time where you're kind of like almost beta testing the idea and getting feelers out there, seeing who's interested. You don't need to make promises, but you're able to just put out feelers. And then the other thing related to this that I wanted to add was fear. Fear comes up when we talk about building a new project. And I was working with a coach through so when I was working at Akimbo, I took one of the workshops called the Alt MBA. It's a 30-day workshop, and you're matched up with a coach during that program. And the coach had reflected back to me in a conversation about fear. She said, Taylor, if you were in a car with fear, where would your fear be? Let's say you're driving on the road and fear is in the car with you. Where is it? She's like, is it driving the car? Is it sitting in the passenger seat? Is it in the back? Is it in the passenger seat and it's trying to grab the wheel from you? Is it turning up the volume on your music? Is it in the back, like in the trunk? Where's the fear? And I just thought it was such a powerful image to give, because it makes you question, where do I want fear in my life? And so in those moments when you're going to start a new project and that fear creeps up, I like to say that fear is going to be in the passenger seat. It's not allowed to touch the radio, not allowed to touch the steering wheel.
I love that.
But it can point me in a direction, and I can be grateful for its directions, for its, it telling me, hey, I'm here. I'm glad I saw it, because it usually is showing up when something's important to me. And when I need to be a little bit careful. And so I'm glad it's there, but I also am still the one driving and I've got the wheel. So as you create a community project, think about where fear is showing up and be grateful that it is, because it probably means you're onto something.
Ooh, Taylor, that was really good. I love that so much. And I will be sending this to clients, be like, listen to this podcast, especially at whatever time that just was set. When you're feeling the feels, listen to that and keep listening to that. That was really good. And on that note, now you're in this new position. You're head of community. You're reaching out to your people, getting them on the app. You're really stepping into this role. What for you has been helpful of cultivating this community? Like some things that just practically that you are doing that you're like, this has been really working for us, or really working on building this creative community. Because if anyone doesn't know, can you give them just a little spiel of like, what is Groove, and then go back to like how it's working?
Yeah. So as Kelly mentioned, it's an app where you hop onto a 50-minute co-working session. So you just click the big green button and you're matched up with 1 to 3 other people from around the world. And it's full of interesting, cool, creative humans. A lot of folks that are working from home, starting their own businesses. Like I said, they're total projects people who have long to-do lists, and they got to get some accountability on that stuff as they conquer those to-dos. And so the main experience is hopping into those grooves. You can also go into a groove and privately groove with just a friend of yours. You can schedule a groove in advance. There's a few other features there. But it's evolved over time. And so it continues to be a way for us to connect people from all over the world who, for one reason or another, are on these solo journeys, working from home. Some of them are digital nomads, hopping from place to place, and they don't have that physical community near them. Some of them are doing something different than a lot of their friends are doing, and they just want people to like cheer them on. So it's become really a community of cheerleaders, of people supporting each other on those wavy path journeys. As far as like, what have I been doing that's working, and things I would share as tangible takeaways for someone else to implement, I would say one, as I mentioned before, listen, because people are willing to share their experiences if you ask them good questions, if you leave a little bit of silence. We do a ton of research talking to groovers face to face. Luckily for me, I'm hopping into groove sessions all the time. So sometimes at the end of a groove session, I'll just like say, hey, do you have 1 more minute? I had a quick question, because I'm already in those sessions with them. So it's easy to grab that face-to-face time instead of scheduling on a calendar. But even just 10 minutes with a community member could teach you so much. I would also say do the things that aren't scalable as much as you can, because you're going to wish that you did those non-scalable things as you grow, because those are the things that are going to make a big difference. And one day you're hopefully not going to be able to do those things because it's so big. So a good example of this is, we're recording this just a little bit after the holidays. And last year in 2022, I guess it was 2021 going into 2022, I had sent out holiday gifts to all of our most active groovers, which at the time was, I don't know, like 60 people that were like really active on the platform. And so I hand wrote everyone an individual card with a specific message, because I knew those people. I really knew them. I'd listened and spent time with them. I hand packaged all of these. Yeah, it was great. I hand packaged all of these notebooks with these cute pens, and it was like this groovy package. And I, as you mentioned, live in New York. So I had my little grandma grocery cart, and I loaded them up with my packages, and I went to the USPS. I had to make 3 separate trips because I couldn't carry all of it. And at the end of it, I was almost in tears, because I was like, oh my gosh, this was such a big project and I'm never going to do this again. But I loved doing it. It was just at the end, it was like this emotional, like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. And it was crazy then. And I think it was emotional. I remember calling Josh, my CEO and boss and co-founder, and saying like, that was a wild thing to do. And it felt wild at that time, but I think it was emotional knowing I could never do it again. I would never be able to handwrite we have so many users now. We have over 1,000 users on the Groove app. There's no way I could handwrite cards to everyone and wish them a happy holidays. So while you have those moments where you can do those non-scalable things, do them. This year, a year later, like I said, we've got over 1,000 people on the app. Instead of sending out these really individual holiday packages, we made these really cool graphics that reminded me of Spotify Wrapped, where anyone who had Groove 5 times, you got this like really cool wrap up of all of the things that you would accomplish in Groove that year, how many people you had met, really fun stats. And so that was our version of like the non-scalable thing. The way that we did that and created those graphics this year, I will not be able to do that in 4 months. I won't be able to do that in a year because we will continue to grow, and the way that I did it wasn't scalable. So if you can do those things from the early days, I think that they make such a big impact because people know that they're not scalable.
Totally. And I'm so happy you said that, because that is something that means a lot to me when I receive things like that. And also I did something this past year. I did a pre-sale of my new book, and I packaged everything myself, and I wrote notes in all the books. And my girlfriend, she was helping me, and she was like, you know, this isn't scalable. She's a director of ops, and she works for
she knows what's up.
Too. Yeah. And I was like, no, I know. And I had a very similar emotional feeling. I was like, wow, I'm never going to be able to do this again. Like, it was insane. Thank God she helped me, because we went into the post office like with bags. And
it was like Santa's workshop over here.
Yeah, no, same, in my tiny New York City apartment. And it was something that like, I knew I was never going to be able to do that again, but it felt so good that I was able to really support the community that kicked it all off.
Totally.
And so I love that. And that really resonates. That just was me a few weeks ago. So thank you for saying that. And the way that you articulated it really helps me put words to what I was feeling, because I was like, why am I feeling so emotional about this? But that totally makes sense. Like, that moment will never happen again. So with that said, building a community, there was so much great advice in here. If people, I know, people are gonna want to groove. How do they find the groove? How do they start grooving?
Yeah.
Like, how does it work? Because I would say one of the number one things with all the creatives that I work with who are building their small businesses, making it a consistent practice to work on just their business and not necessarily always doing client or customer projects or, fulfilling orders if it's service or product based, but really working on their own goals and keeping accountable to that. Groove is a great solution. I've told many clients about it already. So how does someone get started to start getting in the groove?
Yeah, I know, it's so groovy to talk about.
I really love the name.
Yeah, I was not a part of that decision at all. But like groove, groover, grooving, I'm like, yes,
all of it.
And then people will say like, oh, I really got in a groove, and then we're all like, haha, you just used it.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll put the link into the show notes, and that way everyone can hop in. It's super easy. And just sign up right away, and you'll be in the app, and it'll be quick and easy.
So they download the app, and then walk us through of how to do your first groove. Cause I remember my first groove, you were so nice, and like you were part of it, and it made me feel comfortable, because I'm actually pretty introverted. So even showing up to new spaces digitally sometimes gives me anxiety. So it was so nice to like see your face there. But if someone's just starting for the first time and they don't know anybody yet, I've already connected with some people that I've met through the Groove app, which was really cool. How do you do it? So you're working on your business. It's like maybe a Monday, and you're like, okay, I have a lot of shit to do.
Yep.
I need to stay accountable. A good co-working session would sound really good right now. What do they do next?
Yeah. So there's a big green button on the home screen. You can just click that, and that'll bring 1 to 3 other people into that groove with you. I think what you just said about like that stranger danger of like, who am I going to meet on here is a question we hear from so many new groovers. And so we're launching new features as we speak. By the time that this podcast comes out, they might even be live.
Cool.
And some of them have to do, with exactly what I had just said of it. You're going to laugh. One of the new features that we just created is, we're joking, it's called Virtual Taylor. And
Oh my
basically
gosh.
it's like hilarious. I'm like, I better win an award for my performance in this. But basically the idea is, when you hop into the Groove app, and this will come out in the next month or so, people will have the option to either hop into their first groove or do a test groove with Virtual Taylor. So I pre-recorded this video walkthrough that's very similar to the experience that I had given you, where I'm like, hey, Taylor from New York City here. I'm not actually here right now, but this is how Groove works. I'm going to show you over the next.
Oh, I love that.
And it's really cool because then while you're in, so there's a lot of structure to the Groove app, where when you get into that first video chat, someone has the mic, which is great because you've got a pink box around you. Someone's got the mic. It means that it's time for them to go first and share what they're up to for the next 50 minutes. Then it says pass the mic. So in the Virtual Taylor session, I will pass the mic to you, whoever's listening. And then I'll give you the chance to like practice saying out loud what a goal is that you have for that session. And then you'll click the button that says start work. Once that start work button has been clicked, we go off of video, off of audio. It's time to actually focus and get stuff done. You'll see a to-do list where you can add anything that you want to get done during those 50 minutes, cross things off as we're accomplishing them, cheer each other on in that written chat we're in. And then at the very end, you click a button to come back on video, regroup, and share how it went. So with Virtual Taylor, you're able to walk through that whole experience in just 3 minutes. But like I said, a normal Groove session is 50 minutes long, with a couple of minutes at the beginning for the video chat and a couple of minutes at the end for the video chat. So I think that Virtual Taylor will change the game for a lot of people. I am also grooving all the time. The team's grooving all the time. You'll see if you click on anyone's profile how many times they grooved. So it does feel good when you are looking and someone has already started a groove. Maybe you're not feeling up for creating your own quite yet, but you see someone else just started a groove and that person has 231 grooves under their belt. And you might be like, you know what? They know what they're doing around here. I'll go ahead and join them. So you can do that. And then the other thing that we're building right now that, again, will be live pretty soon is something called spaces. So I feel like your audience would love this. The idea is to have private spaces inside a Groove for people with shared identities, for people who work in certain fields.
I love this.
Habits. So for example, if you're like, okay, I need to be rocking my Mondays, or I need to be getting my mornings going, you could be a part of a space that's specific to people who are getting their day started. So then you can start a Groove, and the only people that will be joining you are people also getting their day started. Or if you're a writer and you want to join the writer's space, you can go ahead and just be matched up just with writers. So you're welcome to join the other ones, to join one with everyone, to join one with just friends that you might know on the app already. And of course, like I said, these spaces features are coming out soon. So we're always building new features and addressing those types of questions and comments, because you're not alone in thinking that. So many people are.
No, I think that all sounds really good. I'm really excited about the spaces.
I know, me too.
That sounds
such a game changer.
Yeah, I really love that. And also I'm thinking too, I would love to use it at, like, for people who are in my incubator. It could be like, meet me at Groove on this day, or, something like that would be really cool. Okay. I'm in. I'm down. I'm down to do the spaces.
Yeah. And also, of course, I'm happy to groove with any of your listeners. Like if someone's listening,
perfect.
Like, I want to do a walkthrough with Taylor, you'll find me in the app. I send a little message to everyone that joins. We can do our own little private groove together. So
I love it.
Situated.
I love it. Thank you so much, Taylor. This was awesome. You shared such great advice. Everything will be in the show notes. And I was telling Taylor and everyone listening now, I want to shift the application of what people learn on this podcast, because I'm bringing on such cool, interesting, inspiring people. But also I want to make sure that people feel like they can apply it to what they're working on. So stay tuned, everyone. Next week, we're going to be talking about building community in your own creative small business based off of all the awesome advice Taylor just shared. And we'll make sure that you are getting your Groove app downloaded and start grooving, and we could do it together. so that it feels approachable and doable, because these are small habits that we could start in our day-to-day life that really build up over time. And I love how this has intersected into community and also showing up for yourself, because both are equally important. And I love applications that help do both. So thank you again, Taylor. Thanks to the Groove team. Like, you all are just
Yes.
doing something really cool. And yeah, I'll see you very soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.